Welcome to Talking with the Animals, an exploration of animal communication. Join animal communicator, craniosacral therapist, and NES practitioner Caroline Pope as she discusses how to understand other species as they truly are, not just from the human perspective. That's right, Meko. Discover how communicating with our four-legged friends can open up a whole new world for both of you. And now, your host and Australia's most recognized and well-known animal communicator, Caroline Pope.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking with the Animals. I'm your host, Caroline Pope. Thank you for joining me. Because it's Christmas, or pretty much Christmas, I'm going to talk about a topic that most people prefer to try and brush under the carpet at this time of the year, and that's dumped pets. And unfortunately, because so many people chose to get puppies or dogs during COVID, they may have realised by now that they're not just cute. You've got to put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of training into them. And puppies and dogs can also be expensive. And of course, many people haven't bargained for that. And particularly because we've been in lockdown and many people wish to see their family either interstate or overseas, they've suddenly realised that often, particularly if you've got multiple animals, putting your animals in a kennel or a cattery costs almost as much as the holiday, or finding a good pet sitter. And so, unfortunately, many people find it easier, quicker and more convenient to dump the pet. Now, this, if the animal is lucky, will be an animal shelter. That animal will then have a chance at being rehoused, or if not, it'll be euthanized. Not pretty, not advocating for it, but at least there won't be suffering. I was speaking to a friend of mine who's a ranger in country Victoria, and he lives on the border of a state forest. He told me that he's found more dogs this year dumped in the state forest than the last 10 combined. Think about it. Now, we already have a feral dog and cat population problem. Think of how a dog will die. Slowly, by starvation, snake bite. It's not going to be a pretty end. And this is a dog or cat that's done nothing wrong. That was theoretically someone's beloved pet. That, as we often do in our society, it's no longer convenient, I'll discard it. And having spoken to many of these animals, it's horrendous. They don't understand what they've done wrong. One of my own dogs was dumped at Christmas, and it took me 2 years to realise why he was so ratty for a couple of months each year. He thought he was going to be left at Christmas because that's what had happened before. So what can we do about it? There are people that are going to dump their animals regardless. We all know this. That's just sadly how it works. But there's quite a bit you can do. For the shelters, for example, that are overwhelmed at this time of year, if you can donate to a shelter, if you can volunteer at a shelter, if you talk to your neighbours, and it's a financial thing, then they can't do it, and you're worried that putty tat or puppy dog may be dumped, perhaps you're able to volunteer time to house sit at home. And even stuff like, if you don't talk to your neighbours much, one of my clients actually shamed the guy into going back and getting his dog. He dumped it, didn't say where, so she didn't ask. But there was just something in the way he was the last week or so, so she just felt she was obliged to strike up a conversation. She really liked this little dog, and it was getting close to Christmas, and so one day she saw him without the dog. So, of course, naturally, being a dog lover, she asked where the dog was. And she said she knew immediately. He went red-faced and started making excuses. 2 days later, the dog came back. And he admitted to her later that he had dumped the dog. So, talk to your neighbours, because dumping often happens when people feel they're either not accountable or they have no choice. Sometimes there's literally, particularly at the moment, money to feed. There's plenty of animal shelters that will donate feed to people rather than having to deal with the pets because they're just overwhelmed. And whilst it's certainly not the animal's fault, and quite frankly, I don't have any time, as you can well imagine, for people that dump pets. People often don't know, as with, battered women or anything else, what your options are, because until you're actually in those circumstances, it's not something you try and find. So try to have a bit of Christmas spirit compassion and see if what's going on, see if you can help them. And if you do suspect, because by law now all animals are microchipped, and if someone goes away for Christmas and then comes back without an animal and they won't tell you what's happened, report it to the council. Get the council to ask, because believe me, a council will follow up if they haven't marked the animal as deceased or signed it over to someone else. They will follow up. And the animal may thank you for it. And at the very least, if someone's put in an uncomfortable situation for something they don't want to answer to, if they're given the 3rd degree by the council, they're not going to be as likely to get another pet. Because this is what happens. It's so easy. And that's the problem. So no one asks. I've seen people go get a cute puppy. If it's lucky, it'll last a year or two. If it's not, it only lasts just under 12 months. They dump it at a shelter. They're not asked any questions. And then they get back after Christmas and adopt a puppy. And unfortunately, there isn't much we can do to stop that apart from trying to make people accountable. So if you do talk to your neighbours, talk with them. If you think they're struggling, offer them help. Raise awareness. Help your animal shelters. Donate time to the people that do the lost and found, because God knows they're busy enough over the Christmas period. And just basics. Make sure your animal's got ID. If people are going away and the animal is being house sat by someone, suggest to them that they get another tag engraved with the number of the person who is animal sitting, dog or cat. Because it's not much use if you're overseas or interstate and your dog or cat gets out, you can't do anything. You need to have whoever's in charge of your animal. That's the mobile number you want on the ID tag. So think of that too. It's sad, I know. It's one of those things that I think as a society we need to make ourselves more accountable, but there's so many animals, and I'm really noticing it with COVID, both dogs and cats, and sadly horses too, because the old saying, poverty is owning a horse. I spoke to a horse last week that got turfed out into a paddock and I had to follow up. And I did actually shame the family into taking it back. It was much more, we hadn't realised how much work they were, rather than we can't afford it. And, I'm hoping to find this little tacker a home in a hurry. But, a lot of the times people see Lassie or Rin Tin Tin or, cats, and cats can be fabulous company, or with horses. The whole thing I see on Facebook at the moment is looking for my next forever unicorn. Well, your so-called forever unicorn lasts 3 months and people either realise that they don't like shoveling pony poo twice a day, or just how expensive a horse is. And of course, it's simple to buy one. Everyone wants to buy one, but old story, buying it's one thing, trying to sell is another. And unfortunately, all the horse shelters are fully taken up with animals as well. So I do appreciate that it's not always easy to offload if you need to, but there's always a solution. And it's our job as guardians to take the initiative and find a solution, not just dump our four-legged friends for convenience. Thank you for listening to this episode of Talking with the Animals. I hope you all have a wonderful, safe and happy Christmas and New Year break. I myself will be taking a couple of weeks from podcasting. I'll be back at the end of January. Thank you to everybody who has supported me and my podcast. Thank you to everybody who's written in. As always, feel free to like and subscribe. And if there's any topics you want me to cover in the new year, please drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you. Stay safe, stay happy, and as always, remember to talk with the animals.
Thank you for listening to Talking with the Animals. To learn more about Caroline and the services she provides, visit caroline-pope.com. You can also find her on Facebook at Caroline Pope Animal Communicator, CST, and NES Therapy. Are you ready to change the way you see your world and the animals in it? Well, we know his answer. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.